As we head to week 12 of the fantasy football season, which quarterbacks and tight ends should be in your lineup? We're about to tell you. Welcome back, Endgame community. I'm Pierre, he's Chris. We're here to break down every matchup for week 12 to talk about the quarterbacks and tight ends that matter, who should be in or out. Let's start with the guys that are must starts no matter what. At quarterback, Josh Allen, Pat Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, and Justin Fields if he plays. At tight end, Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, and George Kittle. All right, let's kick it off with a Thursday matchup. And we're talking about Thursday, the day matchups. We got 3 games because, of course, it's Thanksgiving. So Bills and the Lions is first up. You know you're good with Josh Allen. What about Dawson Knox? He actually saw a slight uptick in usage last week. Does that give you some hope? Because he does get the Lions this week.
Yes, the Lions, they're pretty bad against tight ends. I think Knox this week, not my favorite, streaming option, but I think if you need a streaming tight end, he's not a bad option. You can stream him.
This might be the week to roll him out, but at the same time, there's no team on bye, and so even though the tight end landscape is pretty bleak, you probably don't necessarily need him. But look, if you do need a tight end for whatever reason and he's out there, I think you could stream him. Now, as far as Detroit goes, still Jared Goff at the helm. Still probably Superflex only, I'm guessing.
Not even Superflex only this week against the Bills. I mean, the problem for Jared Goff is when they get near the goal line, they just hand it off to Jamal. They sometimes even hand it off to DeAndre Swift. Like, they don't throw it near the goal line. So I'm not starting Jared Goff against the Bills in any format.
Yeah, that's probably a good decision. And you know what? Like I said, with every team playing, you probably have some other option that at least has some more upside. So yeah, let's just go ahead and sit Goff this week. What about Brock Wright at tight end? Kind of the TJ Hawkinson replacement, I guess. At least found the end zone. Do you think he could do that?
Nah, tough matchup. Not putting my fantasy hopes on Brock Wright. I'm sitting him.
No, you definitely should be able to do better than Brock Wright. Giants at the Cowboys. Daniel Jones proved to be a really good streamer for fantasy last week, but this time he's going against the Cowboys. Can you trust Daniel Jones?
No, not at all. I mean, you're really hoping he runs in a touchdown or something. Like 2 QB Superflex only, and even that is borderline for me this week.
Yeah, I mean, you're really hoping he runs for yardage or a touchdown, but he's probably going to get his lunch eaten by Micah Parsons and the Cowboys pass rush, so I will sit Daniel Jones as much as possible. Dak Prescott, I mean, obviously looked great last week, though Cowboys routed the Vikings. Is Dak Prescott now kind of a must start?
Yeah, I was almost going to suggest we put him in that, no doubt must start, but he's been great every week he's been back, regardless of matchup. I think you got Dak, you're starting Dak.
Yeah, and this Giants defense didn't look that great last week, so I'll say Dak Prescott a very solid start. Dalton Schultz didn't put numbers as expected because, well, they didn't really need to pass it that much, but do you feel like this is a get-right spot?
Yeah, I still like Dalton Schultz. I think he's one of those tight ends. You got him, you just put him in your lineup, and you take whatever he gives you.
Yeah, agree. Solid start. I'm definitely starting Schultz if I got him. Patriots taking on the Vikings. Mac Jones at the helm. Do you think he can do anything against this Minnesota defense?
I mean, this is a good matchup for him, but I mean, really, what are we expecting from Mac Jones? Maybe a touchdown? I just can't do it. There's just not enough upside here. I can't start Mac Jones.
I will never have interest in Mac Jones. Sorry. Conservative offense. Not any great standout weapons at receiver. Just no interest in Mac Jones, even in a 2 QB league. Kirk Cousins, I mean, look, he's got to bounce back from last week, but he gets the Patriots, which is a really tough pass defense. I mean, how do you feel about him in a single quarterback league?
In a single quarterback league, not good. I think there are better options this week, but I think he's still startable in a Superflex 2 QB type of league.
Yeah, I'm not trusting him. We know they were due for a letdown, and they definitely got it. I feel like this might be kind of a hangover game where even though they're going back at home, the offense, I don't know. I'm not putting a lot of faith in Kirk Cousins. Superflex, sure, you could roll him out, but in a single quarterback league, I'm not starting Cousins. And then TJ Hawkinson, does he bounce back?
I mean, probably. He's like Schultz to me. He's one of these guys, if you have him, you put him in your lineup, and you just take whatever he gives you.
I actually do feel good about Hawkinson, ironically, because Patriots really haven't been good against tight ends this year. And if someone's going to get involved, I think they're going to allow Hawkinson to get catches. You know that Bill Belichick is going to try to take Justin Jefferson out of the game. So I kind of like Hawkinson this week. Broncos will take on the Panthers. All right, let's start with the Russell Wilson side.
Yeah, what a disappointment. What a letdown last week in a great spot. This is another really good spot. Not as good, but it's still a good spot. But it's still, what can you really expect from Russell Wilson at this point? I mean, I don't even think I could start him in a super flex league anymore. I just got to sit Russell Wilson, even in a good matchup.
You know, give the Panthers some credit that after the trade deadline, when it's clear that even though they did keep Brian Burns and some of their top assets, it's clear that this season is pretty much over for them, but their defense has responded the last couple of weeks. I have no interest in Russ Wilson. It was the best possible matchup last week, and he still didn't do much, so I'm benching Russell Wilson and for the rest of the season. Greg Dulcich, can he do something?
I don't know. Probably not. I mean, I feel like that little kind of like mini run he went on is over, and now we're seeing the real Greg Dulcich again. I'm sitting him.
Yeah, I feel like he could and should be so much better if the situation were different, but it's not. I can't do it. In fact, I don't even think you need to keep Dulcich anymore. Tampa Bay going to take on Cleveland. Tom Brady after the bye. Do you think this is kind of a revival game for him?
I do. I think this is a good spot for Brady. I think they're going to, unlike, some of these teams like the Broncos who come out of the bye and haven't figured anything out, the Bucs will figure it out. I expect a much better Tom Brady. I think he's one of the better, kind of streaming options, I guess, in one QB league. So definitely starting Tom Brady.
Look, maybe this is being overly optimistic, but if there was a team that needed the bye week, it was Tampa. Even though they've been winning, you know that a lot going on there. I could see a top 10 quarterback finish for Tom Brady this week against Cleveland. So definitely starting him if I got him. And then Cade Otton, well, he kind of fell because Cam Brate did come back. I think Otton's probably the lead pass catcher at tight end. So let's talk about him. Is Otton startable?
No, not with Brate back. Just touchdown or bust. And even then he might, with a touchdown, he still might not do much. So I'm not starting Otton.
No, he was looking promising, but again, now going to split snaps with Cameron Brate, so Otton is somebody you can sit. Jacoby Brissett had a really good game fantasy-wise last week, over 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. Do you think he can keep it going?
Against the Bucs, probably not. I'm not starting Jacoby Brissett.
No, me either. Super flex, sure, but don't go so far as to stream him over any other solid quarterback. David Njoku, well, maybe one step closer to full health. Can he do something against Tampa?
Yeah, this is the thing. How healthy was he last week? How healthy is he this week? But still, I think if you've got Njoku, you got to keep rolling with him. Hope he's healthier because we know what he can do when he's healthy. So I think you got to start him again.
Given the way tight end situation looks these days, I think he just by default is a top 10 tight end. So I think if you got him, you can start him. Baltimore taking on Jacksonville. Lamar Jackson, he's no longer a no doubt must start. The numbers just haven't really been there. Look, I know the weapons at wide receiver aren't there either, but that's their own fault. They just didn't give him anything. Rashad Bateman is out. So against Jacksonville on the road, what do you expect from Lamar?
I mean, it's a very good matchup. This should be, a no doubt Lamar start. But like you said, just this offense, no weapons. So I still think if you got Lamar, because the matchup is so good, you're starting him. But yeah, just not a smash spot anymore like it should have been.
You're relying on that rushing production. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. But even so, it hasn't been elite. So, obviously he's still going to be one of the better quarterback options. But you know what? I do feel like there's some players out there. Tom Brady, I think, might be better this week, honestly. So, yeah, Lamar is definitely still startable. I'm not going to go too far, though. And then there's Trevor Lawrence. Do you think the week off will make anything click for this Jacksonville offense?
Maybe. It's a good matchup. But Trevor Lawrence just kind of is what he is. Borderline streamable this week in a 1 QB league because of the matchup. He's fine in 2 QB Superflex, but in 1 QB, he's like a borderline streaming option.
Yeah, borderline at best. I don't know. We haven't seen that big step forward. I feel like Trevor Lawrence is what he is at this point. To me, it's a 2 QB option only. Evan Engram at tight end. I feel like he has some value at least this week.
Yeah, it's a good matchup. And again, I kind of feel like Ingram is another one of these tight ends that if you've got him, you just roll with him and you take what you get.
Texans at the Dolphins. Now I can start a guy by the name of Tua Tagovailoa, especially against Houston. This is another smash spot. He's a must start.
Yeah, I keep saying it. This Houston pass defense is not as vulnerable as people think it is, but it's Tua. He's got Tyreek. He's got Waddle. You got to start him.
Mike Gesicki, on the other hand, I don't know. I mean, even with all these injuries at tight end, how would you feel about him?
Not good. I mean, it's the Tyreek and Waddle show, so I'm not starting Mike Gesicki.
I don't think there's anybody in that defense who can shut down their receivers or the running back, so Gesicki probably not going to get used. I'd say you just go ahead and sit him. All right, Bears going to take on the Jets. Let's talk Cole Kmet. Finally, kind of cooled down. He's still looking really good, but the question is, will he be catching passes from Justin Fields? Either way, how do you feel about him against the Jets?
If it's Justin Fields, I feel okay about him. I think you still have to start him. It's not a good matchup at all, but you know we've seen with Fields, he could score a touchdown. If it's Simeon, no way, he's on my bench.
Agree. You still have to be interested in him with Fields, but otherwise, again, Jets at the very least have a good defense, so I think this might be the week where you can sit Kmet. Bengals at Titans. We know Joe Burrow is continuing his hot streak. What about Hayden Hurst? He's just kind of been okay for fantasy. Does he do any better?
Yeah, he's kind of been disappointing recently. I think he's one of these guys, like, if you can stream him, you need him. He's not my favorite streaming option this week. There's definitely guys I like more. I might even like Dawson Knox more this week against Detroit, but if you need him, you can start him, I guess.
Yeah, well, I'd say I'll agree, but I'm actually going to go lower. I'll say just sit Hayden Hurst. Really thought he might benefit from Jamar Chase being out. He hasn't. Even if Mixon is out, I don't feel a big Hayden Hurst game is just in the cards. You know, he's going to go to his other receivers. So I'm going to pass on Hayden Hurst this week. Now, a guy you probably didn't realize has put up good numbers the last couple weeks since coming back is Ryan Tannehill. Now, Bengals may be a tougher assignment, but what do you think Tannehill could do?
Yeah, Tannehill's been surprisingly good in the 2 games since he's been back, but still, I can't play Ryan Tannehill in a 1 QB league. It is a fairly tough matchup. I'm going to say Superflex 2 QB only.
I'm going to agree. Put him right there. As always, I don't know if Tannehill will ever really crack the top 10 or 12 quarterbacks for fantasy. What about Austin Hooper? You know, we had forgotten about him because he hadn't done much, and then, of course, he goes and catches 2 touchdowns last week. Is this the start of something, or is it just in one of those fluky games?
Feels pretty fluky, especially since one of those touchdowns was from Derrick Henry. Don't think that's happening again. I'm not starting Austin Hooper.
Yeah, neither am I. Just figure it was worth mentioning, but again, don't buy too much into one game when the trend had been that he was really not that involved. Falcons at Commanders. Marcus Mariota is still there and probably still just a super flex option. Am I right?
Yeah, but barely this week. This is a tough matchup. This Commanders defense has gotten a lot better. May have Chase Young back this week too. There's some talk about it. So, yeah, barely on the Superflex 2 QB radar.
Yeah, I would like to think barely clinging to his job. I know Falcons just won. They're technically still in the playoff race, but man, I'm ready to see Desmond Ridder just get a shot. Taylor Heineke, well, it looks like he's keeping the job for the rest of the season. They just declared that he's the guy. Now he gets Atlanta. I mean, does this draw any interest for you in terms of streaming options?
Again, not starting Taylor Heineke in a 1 QB league, even in a good matchup like this, but I do think in a 2 QB Superflex league, it makes him, definitely startable in that type of format.
I mean, the matchup is great, but again, there's no team on bye this week. Not any serious quarterback injuries, and you really shouldn't need to stream in. So maybe an interesting DFS tournament option, but otherwise, in redraft leagues, just super flex only. And then we should talk about again Logan Thomas. It looks like he's kind of had a revival last week, led this team in receptions and yardage, and now he gets Atlanta. What do you think?
Yeah, I said there are streaming options I like more than, Hayden Hurst, and this is one of them. Logan Thomas, I like Logan Thomas a lot this week. If you need a tight end, go out to the waiver wire, get Logan Thomas. I think he has a big game.
And he's a guy who's widely available because, well, he hadn't really done much this year, but definitely worth taking a hard look at this week. So I like him as kind of a low-end tight end one option. Chargers at the Cardinals. Is Justin Herbert back? Looked better, getting some weapons back. Maybe he soon becomes a must-start again. But let's talk just this week, Week 12 against Arizona. How do you feel?
Yeah, I feel good. I mean, not as good of a matchup as he had last week against the Chiefs, and it would be nice if he had a healthy Mike Williams, but still, Keenan's out there. Palmer's looking pretty good. You can always dump it off to Eckler. I think you start Justin Herbert this week.
Yeah, definitely back to being a solid start. Wish Mike Williams was back. One thing that, not good for the Chargers or their fans, but good for Herbert, is that their defense still just letting down, injuries and all this stuff, sure, but just disappointing on defense, which means they're going to have to keep passing the ball. But look, Herbert is a solid start this week. Not going to be elite in terms of fantasy production, but he's going to be solid. Now, Gerald Everett did miss last week. Not sure his status. If he does come back, do you play him?
I think you have to. Arizona, one of the worst defenses against tight ends. For whatever reason, I think if Everett plays, you gotta roll with him and start him.
Well, I'll say this kind of conditional. Good spot, but if Mike Williams is back and then you got Keenan Allen back and Palmer now involved, he would be kind of a low-end, very fringe starter for me. But if Mike Williams is out, I feel good enough I would start Gerald Everett. And then there's Kyler Murray. 2 weeks he has missed now. You would think he'd be back next week. If so, do you take a chance on him?
I think you have to. It's the Chargers. For whatever reason you talked about it, defense not playing well. I think if Kyler plays, you play him.
Yeah, I agree. Again, a guy who always has that upside. Gotta hope that his rushing ability isn't hampered by the fact it's a hamstring injury, but yeah, the defense is bad enough. He's still a good start. And then at tight end, it's the rookie Trey McBride with Ertz out for the season. Do you go with McBride?
No, not ready to put him in my lineups yet. Not starting McBride. There's no bye weeks this week. You shouldn't need McBride.
Yeah, I'm going to agree. And again, we're going to assume Marquise Brown might be back. That means they got 3 really good receivers. They probably don't need to go to the rookie tight end too much. So, no, I would pass on McBride. Raiders at the Seahawks. Derek Carr, still a starter for now, at least the rest of this season. Is he a starter in fantasy?
Look, I know he came through against Denver, because Devontae Adams somehow got wide open twice for touchdowns. And look, Adams can do that, but the Seahawks secondary has been good. They've been pretty good this year. Like Superflex 2 QB only.
Agree. Just not living up to expectations. The Seahawks, man, playing in Seattle, that's never easy. And this defense has been pretty decent. So I'll say only in a 2 QB Superflex league. Foster Moreau didn't do much last week. Does he do anything better this week?
I mean, this is a great matchup. I talked about Arizona being one of the worst against the tight ends. So is Seattle. So he was out there a bunch last week. Played every single snap. I think Moreau, another streaming option I really like this week.
I'm going to agree. I think he's definitely streamable if you need a tight end. Can't get carried away with him, but still, the matchup makes you think that he is startable. Geno Smith, how do you feel about him against the Raiders, who have given up the most fantasy points to quarterbacks?
Yeah, you got to feel very good about Geno Smith this week. Even in a 1 QB league, I'm starting him.
There you go. Definitely a strong position for him. And coming off of the bye week, I think they'll be ready to take on the Raiders, who are down and out at this point, even after that win. And then let's talk about Noah Fant. Did have a big game a couple of weeks ago. I mean, does he have any interest? Because, again, this is the Raiders defense we're talking about. So can you start Fant?
No. Raiders much worse against receivers and tight ends. And, I already talked about some. I just think in this week with no buys, there's guys I like better, like, Logan Thomas, like even Foster Moreau, just better streaming options this week. I'm going to sit Noah Fant.
Yeah, I agree there. I mean, I think big games in store for the Seattle receivers. Noah Fant, though, you really shouldn't need him this week. So I'll say just sit him. Rams at the Chiefs. And then what about Tyler Higbee? A lot of people thought, well, he might be the guy who benefits from Cooper Kupp being out. Didn't really happen, though.
No, I mean, if it didn't happen last week without Cooper Kupp, I'm out on Tyler Higbee now, not starting him.
Yeah, I'm just out on the Rams, period. Saints at the 49ers, still Andy Dalton. Look, he actually put up some decent numbers last week. Can he do it against San Francisco on the road?
Probably not. It's not the worst pass defense, but it's a good defense. It should get lots of pressure on him. And like he did this like a few weeks ago against Arizona, had a big game, and then everybody started thinking like Andy Dalton was the guy they had to start. And then he did nothing for a few weeks. Not banking on him putting together 2 big games in a row. I'm not starting Andy Dalton.
No, I'm definitely worried about him. That pass rush is good with Bosa. I could see Dalton having a tough time. So no interest in Dalton, even in Superflex leagues. Juwan Johnson did it again, caught another touchdown. Is this a guy now you feel like is onto the tight end scene as like a top 10 option?
No, I can't go that high. But he's a guy like if you're in like a really deep league and you're desperate, he can always score a touchdown. But outside of that, no.
Well, here's the thing. He is scoring touchdowns, but you know how that is. There's no guarantee. And 49ers tough against tight ends. So, yeah, you can start him, especially if you're in a standard league. But I'm not going crazy. Don't get me wrong. So I think he's startable, streamable if you need a tight end. But I'm not forcing him in my lineup. Same goes with Jimmy Garoppolo. Look, the matchup on paper is decent, but he's still just Jimmy G.
Yeah, 2 QB Superflex only.
We got the Packers at the Eagles. Aaron Rodgers, better. Maybe the ayahuasca has worn off or whatever that is. I don't know. Look, what Aaron Rodgers are we going to see here against Philly? Because this definitely could be a letdown game.
Yeah, not as excited about Aaron Rodgers this week as I was last week. 2 QB Superflex only, not starting him in a 1 QB league.
No, I'm definitely not. Philly defense hasn't been as good lately. Aaron Rodgers has been a little better lately. No, let's not get mixed up here and think that this is a good spot for him. Only in Superflex would I start him. And then the final matchup of the week is the Steelers at the Colts. Kenny Pickett at the helm. Look, they put up some points last week, but I don't feel like you can start Pickett in fantasy still, can you?
No, still not ready to start Kenny Pickett. No,
definitely not. What about the Friar Goat, though? This is not a bad spot for him.
No, and you another one of these guys, you've got him, you start him, you take what you get.
All right, there you go. I agree. The floor is there. Touchdowns would be nice to see more of them. Maybe they'll come, but at the very least, I think he is startable. And let's end with Matt Ryan, still the guy in Indy. Do you think he can put up numbers against Pittsburgh?
Maybe, but with Jonathan Taylor back, they're not throwing as much as they were earlier in the season. It is a good matchup, though, but only in 2 QB Superflex leagues.
Yeah, definitely not viable in a 1 QB league. I like him better than guys like Stafford and Dalton. But again, you should definitely be able to find 12 quarterbacks, even 14, that are better than him. All right, that's our take on all the quarterbacks and tight ends that you should be worried about in fantasy for Week 12. We also have you covered for running back, wide receiver, and everything else you need to know to help you win. Check out our playlist right here with all the advice you need.